We trust the global banking system to move trillions of dollars every single day without a glitch. We assume the safeguards are impenetrable. But what happens when a digital ghost lives inside your bank for a year, learns your every move, and prepares to drain your reserves in 48 hours? In February 2016, a billion-dollar heist didn't fail because of a secret agent or a police raid. It failed because of a typo. Here is how it happened. On the morning of February 5th, the staff at the Bangladesh Central Bank arrived to find a quiet office. But in the digital world, the bank was screaming. According to forensic investigators, the Lazarus Group, an elite cyber warfare unit, had been dwelling within the bank's servers for nearly 12 months. They weren't just hackers, they were residents. They studied the flow of capital, the timing of shifts, and the exact protocols used to communicate with the world's financial heart. The New York Federal Reserve. The illusion of security is a powerful thing. To the Bangladesh bank, their connection to the SWIFT network was a locked door. But to the hackers, it was an open invitation. They didn't just break the encryption, they stole the identity of the bank itself. By the time they were ready to strike, the hackers possessed the digital signatures required to move mountains of cash. According to SWIFT's own investigative reports, the attackers had compromised the Alliance Access Terminal, allowing them to send messages that the New York Fed would accept as 100% legitimate. Think of the mechanism here. In international banking, trust isn't a feeling, it's a protocol. When a message comes through the SWIFT terminal, it is treated as a sovereign command. The hackers exploited this blind trust to schedule 35 separate transfer requests. Their target was the $1 billion sitting in the Bangladesh bank's account at the New York Fed. The timing was surgical. They struck on a Friday in Dhaka, the start of the weekend, knowing the New York Fed would still be open for business. While the primary victims were at home, unaware, the rapid success of the first few hours was staggering. The Fed's automated systems began processing the orders. $101 million cleared almost immediately. $20 million was routed to Sri Lanka, while $81 million headed toward a branch of RCBC in the Philippines. There were no sirens, no flashing lights. Just numbers shifting from a sovereign account into sleeper accounts opened a year earlier by the hackers. To the outside world, Bangladesh was simply making a massive investment. But beneath this illusion of a perfect transfer lay a hidden risk that the hackers had overlooked. They were elite coders, but they weren't native English speakers. As they reached the 20th transfer request, massive sum destined for a non-profit, they made a mistake that no firewall could have predicted. They intended to send the money to the Shalika Foundation. Instead, they typed Shalika Fandation. Imagine the tension in that room. You are moments away from a billion-dollar payday. The global financial system is bowing to your commands. And then, a single letter missing you triggers a legacy compliance algorithm at Deutsche Bank. The transfer didn't just fail. It paused. It forced a manual human review in an era of automated certainty. This was the curiosity gap that would eventually collapse the entire operation. However, the Fandation error was only a partial victory for the bank, while it froze $850 million. The $81 million that had already cleared was now moving through the streets of Manila. According to court filings, that money was being withdrawn in physical cash, loaded into vans, and driven toward the one place where the global financial system loses its trail. The junket rooms of high-stakes casinos. The perfect crime was now a race against time. The hackers had the money, but the typo had blown their cover. As the sun began to rise over Dhaka on Saturday morning, a bank official finally cleared a paper jam in the transaction printer. What he saw wasn't just a technical error, it was evidence of a national catastrophe. The digital ghost was out in the light. So, how did a group of hackers sophisticated enough to breach the Federal Reserve fail at basic spelling? And more importantly, how did $81 million simply evaporate into the Philippine gambling industry without a trace? The mechanism of this collapse reveals a terrifying truth about the global economy. Our billions are only as safe as the people typing the instructions. How does a ghost steal $1 billion? To understand how the Lazarus Group almost emptied a nation's coffers, you have to look past the code. You have to look at the SWIFT system. Think of SWIFT as the Gmail of global banking. It doesn't actually move the money, it sends the instructions to move it. Every day, $5 trillion in instructions fly across this network. It's built on absolute trust. If a message comes through SWIFT with the right digital signatures, The bank on the other end assumes it's God's honest truth. The hacker's core mechanism wasn't just hacking a bank, it was identity theft on a sovereign scale. According to investigators from Mandiant, the Lazarus group spent months inside the Bangladesh bank's network. But they weren't looking for credit card numbers. They were looking for the Alliance Access software, the specific terminal that talks to the SWIFT network. Once they had control of that terminal, they didn't just send messages. They did something far more brilliant. They rewrote the bank's own software code to delete the evidence. Normally, when a SWIFT transfer is made, a printer in the bank automatically prints a confirmation. The hackers wrote a custom piece of malware to intercept that print command and kill it. This created a black hole of information. On the night of the heist, as the hackers sent request after request to the New York Fed, the physical printer in Dhaka, the only thing that could have alerted the staff, sat completely silent. The bank was bleeding out, but the heart monitor had been flatlined by the hackers. Now, imagine the scale. 35 separate requests, nearly $1 billion. But why the New York Fed? Because that's where the big money lives. Most developing nations keep their foreign currency reserves in New York because it's considered the safest place on earth. It's the ultimate irony. The hackers used the world's most trusted bank to rob one of the world's most vulnerable ones. But even a ghost leaves a footprint. The first warning signs didn't come from the bank's security team, they came from the Fed's own standard operating procedure. As the 35 requests flooded in, a few of them raised eyebrows. Not because they looked fake, but because of where they were going. Private individuals in the Philippines, standard banking protocol suggests that a central bank usually sends money to other banks or massive corporations, not to sleeper accounts in Manila. The Fed actually sent several requests for information messages back to Dhaka. But remember the timing. It was Friday in Bangladesh. The bank was empty. The messages sat in an inbox that nobody was checking. The escalation continued. With no response from Dhaka, the Fed's automated system followed the default path. It cleared the first few transactions. $81 million hit the accounts at RCBC Bank in the Philippines. This was the point of no return. But then came the 20th order, the Shelika Foundation request. When the hackers typed Fandation, it triggered a compliance check at Deutsche Bank. This wasn't a high-tech firewall stopping them. It was a simple spell check algorithm. Deutsche Bank reached out to the Fed, and the Fed reached out to Bangladesh. While the world was waking up to the error, the hackers were already in phase 2, the cleanup in the Philippines. The $81 million didn't stay in the bank accounts for more than an hour. It was immediately withdrawn, converted into physical cash, and moved into the one place where the law has no eyes, the casino floor. Here's where it gets interesting. Under Philippine law at the time, casinos were a massive loophole in anti-money laundering rules. Once the money was converted into casino chips, played at a few tables, and cashed out, it became clean. The trail went stone cold. Imagine being the investigator. You track the money to the bank, then to a courier, then to a casino, and then it simply evaporates into the air. The mechanism was perfect. It combined elite cyber warfare with the most basic of human weaknesses, greed and a lack of oversight. The warning signs were everywhere. The silent printer, the weird routing through Manila, the RF is from the Fed, but because the hackers understood the human clock of international banking, they stayed one step ahead. Until that one typo turned the perfect crime into the most famous mistake in financial history. The silence in Dhaka finally broke on Saturday morning, but not with a bang. It started with a frustrated bank official trying to fix a paper jam. When the printer finally roared to life, it didn't just spit out receipts, it spit out the death warrant of the bank's reserves. The trigger moment was pure chaos. According to internal reports, the bank staff saw the New York Fed's queries and realized $1 billion was in flight. They tried to send stop payment orders, but there was one final cruel twist. It was now the weekend in New York. The Fed was closed. The hackers had successfully exploited a 72-hour blind spot in the global financial rotation. By the time the banks reopened on Monday, the liquidity crisis was real. $81 million was gone. Vanished into the junket rooms of Solaire and Midas casinos in Manila. Imagine the sheer scale. Millions of dollars in physical cash being loaded into bags, exchanged for chips, and washed through baccarat tables. Once that money hit the casino floor, the legal jurisdiction ended, and the black hole began. The fallout was swift and brutal. The governor of the Bangladesh bank was forced to resign. The bank's reputation lay in tatters. But the investigation that followed revealed a truth even more terrifying than the theft itself. This wasn't just a group of rogue nerds in a basement. The FBI, after a multi-year probe, officially attributed the attack to the Lazarus group, the elite cyber warfare unit of the North Korean government. Think of the real-world impact. Bangladesh is a developing nation. That $81 million wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was money for infrastructure, for schools, for the lives of millions of citizens. For a sovereign state to be robbed by another state through a digital typo is a system-level failure that changed banking forever. The legal consequences were messy. RCBC, the bank in the Philippines that received the money, was fined a record $20 million. But the bulk of the $81 million was never recovered. Only about $15 million was eventually clawed back from a casino junket operator. The rest, it's likely sitting in the coffers of a sanctioned regime, used to fund projects that the rest of the world is trying to stop. The real-world lesson here is a chilling one. We live in a world where our most secure institutions, the Fed, the SWIFT network, the central banks, are only as strong as a human's ability to spell a word correctly. We rely on trust, but in the digital age, trust is the ultimate vulnerability. Today, the verification gap is slowly closing. SWIFT has implemented new security layers, and banks are more vigilant about odd spelling in transfer orders. But the Lazarus group hasn't gone away. They've moved on to crypto exchanges and even bigger targets. They've learned from their $1 billion mistake. The question is, have we? In the end, $951 million was nearly lost because of a ghost, but $850 million was saved because of a typo. It's a reminder that in the high-stakes world of financial crime, sometimes the most sophisticated shield is a simple U in the word Foundation. And that is a mistake no one can afford to make twice.